The gate buzzer screamed at 11:47 p.m. Rain came down in sheets so thick the street lights looked like smudges. And on the front porch of the Kang estate, arms crossed, silk robe cinched tight, smile stretching wider than it had any right to, Victoria Kang stood watching. She was watching a woman crawl. Not on her knees, not yet, but close enough. Zara Cole was dragging 2 black garbage bags across the gravel driveway, barefoot, still wearing her caregiver's uniform. The white polo. The soft-soled shoes were somewhere inside the house. Victoria had not given her time to find them. She had not given her time to find anything. The bags were not suitcases. That was the point. Victoria had chosen them on purpose, pulled them from the roll under the kitchen sink, and tossed them into the hallway like she was clearing out a storage closet. "You have 10 minutes," she had said. "Pack what you can carry. Leave the rest." 3 security guards stood behind Victoria in a neat line. Not one of them looked at Zara. Not one of them moved to help. They had their hands folded in front of them like men at a funeral, still, quiet, trained to see nothing. And across the street, a neighbor's porch light flicked on. A face appeared behind the glass, then another. A delivery driver slowed his van at the end of the block, craning his neck through the rain-streaked window. Witnesses. There were always witnesses when Victoria performed. Now, if you are hearing this story for the first time, welcome. You found something different here. Hit that subscribe button, tap the bell so you never miss a story, and drop your city in the comments. I want to know where you are listening from. Trust me, you are going to want to stay for this one. Zara's feet hit the wet gravel and she did not flinch. Each step was a small, sharp sting, the kind that wakes you up, not the kind that slows you down. Her dark skin was slick with rain. Her natural hair, which she had spent 40 minutes twisting into neat coils that morning, was pressed flat against her scalp. Water ran down her forehead into her eyes, and she blinked it away without wiping her face. She would not give Victoria the image of a woman wiping tears. Not tonight. Not ever. Victoria tilted her chin up. The porch light caught the shine of her collarbone. She turned to one of the guards, Marcus, the tallest one, the one who had opened the door for Zara every morning for 11 months, and spoke loud enough for the whole block to hear. "Burn the sheets. I do not want her smell in my house." Marcus stared straight ahead. His jaw moved once, like he was chewing on something he could not swallow. He said nothing. Victoria turned back to the driveway. Zara had reached the gate. The iron was locked. The keypad blinked red in the rain. "Open it," Zara said. She did not turn around. Victoria let 5 seconds pass. 10. 15. She let the rain fill the silence. Then she pressed the button on her phone, and the gate clicked open. Slow, mechanical, grinding through the downpour like it resented the effort. Zara stepped through. The gate closed behind her. And that was when Victoria laughed. Not to herself, not under her breath. A full, open, ringing laugh. The kind meant to travel. The kind designed to be the last thing Zara heard as she walked down the dark street with 2 garbage bags and no shoes and 11 months of unpaid exhaustion sitting in her bones like cement. From the 3rd floor of the estate, a light was on. A man stood behind the glass, still as stone. His silhouette filled the window frame. Broad shoulders, hands at his sides, jaw set so tight the muscle in his cheek twitched once, and then went still. Junho Kang did not move. He did not open the window. He did not call down. His phone was in his hand,
the screen casting pale light across his face.
He watched the woman who had bathed his dying mother every morning for 11 months get thrown into the rain like something broken. And he did nothing. He did nothing. That part, that exact part, would not make sense for a long time, because the man standing in that window controlled more than this house, more than this street, more than anything Victoria had ever understood, even after 5 years of marriage. And men like Junho Kang did not do nothing by accident. They did nothing when it served a purpose, when stillness was the weapon, when the right move was no move at all, and everyone watching would only understand why when it was already too late. He dialed a number. The call connected on the second ring. He said 4 words, only 4. Then he ended the call and set the phone on the windowsill, screen down. The rain kept falling. Zara did not look back. Victoria was still laughing on the porch when the gate finished closing. She waved her hand at Marcus like she was shooing a fly. "Check the guest room. If she left anything in the drawers, throw it out." She smoothed her robe. "Actually, throw it out regardless." She went inside. The door closed. The porch light turned off. And in the dark, the cameras kept recording. 4 of them. 1 above the gate, 1 angled at the driveway, 1 mounted beneath the porch awning, 1 behind the glass of the 3rd-floor window, so small it looked like a screw head. They had been installed 5 weeks before tonight, placed carefully, professionally, without a single member of Victoria's staff noticing, without Victoria herself ever thinking to look. The person who ordered them installed did not live in this house anymore. The person who ordered them installed was no longer alive. But the cameras were still running, and every second of what Victoria had just done, every word, every laugh, every garbage bag dragged across the gravel, was now saved to a server that her name was not on, in a file she did not know existed, inside a legal structure she had never been told about. Zara walked for 6 blocks in the rain before she stopped. A gas station. Fluorescent light buzzing above the pumps. She set the garbage bags down on the wet concrete and stood there, chest rising and falling, water dripping from her chin. Her feet were bleeding in 2 places. Small cuts from the gravel, nothing deep, but the sting was bright and constant. She reached into the front pocket of her uniform and her fingers touched paper. Folded. Sealed. Slightly damp, but intact. The envelope. Mrs. Kang had placed it in her pocket 6 days ago. 6 days before she died. Her hands had been so thin by then that Zara could see every bone through the skin. But her grip, when she pressed the envelope into Zara's palm, was iron. "Do not open this," Mrs. Kang had whispered, "until they make you leave." Zara had blinked. "Ma'am, they will make you leave." The old woman's eyes were dry and clear and sharp as broken glass. "When they do, open it. Not before." Zara held the envelope now under the gas station light. The rain had softened the edges. The seal held. She did not open it. Not yet. She picked up the garbage bags. She started walking again. And somewhere behind her, 6 blocks and a locked gate away, the cameras were still recording an empty driveway, an empty porch, and the faint impression of bare footprints in the gravel that the rain had not yet washed away. Junho was still standing at the window. He had not moved. His phone buzzed once on the sill. A confirmation. He read the message, deleted it, and placed the phone in his pocket. Then he pressed his forehead to the cold glass and closed his eyes. His mother's voice was in his head, clear as the day she said it. 3 words she made him repeat back to her, hand on hers, monitors beeping, the room smelling of disinfectant and lavender and endings. Let it happen. He had promised. And tonight, standing at that window, watching a good woman walk barefoot into the dark, He kept his word. But keeping a promise to the dead, he was learning, cost more than breaking one to the living. And the cost was just beginning. 11 months earlier, the house looked different. Not the walls, or the furniture, or the iron gate at the end of the driveway. Those had not changed in years. What was different was the air inside, the tempo of the place. There was a heartbeat in the Kang estate that autumn, slow, fading, but still there. And it belonged to the woman lying in the second-floor bedroom at the end of the East Wing hallway. Mrs. Soo-Yun Kang was 74 years old. She weighed 91 pounds. Her hair, which she had once worn in a careful chignon every day of her adult life, now lay thin and silver against a pillow she could no longer fluff on her own. A hospital bed had replaced the mahogany four-poster she had shared with her late husband for 36 years. Monitors beeped in soft intervals. A morphine drip hung from a chrome stand beside the window. The curtains were always open. She insisted on that. "Close those curtains," she had told Diane once, "and I will know you have given up on me." No one had closed the curtains. Zara arrived on a Tuesday. She came through the front door because no one had told her not to. She carried a single bag, navy blue, scuffed at the corners, a zipper that stuck if you pulled it too fast. Her resume said 5 years of elder care experience, 3 references, a certificate in palliative support from a community college in Baltimore. What her resume did not say, because no piece of paper ever captures the thing that matters most, was that Zara Cole had a way of entering a room that made sick people breathe easier. She did not rush. She did not hover. She moved through a space the way warm water fills a glass, steady, quiet, finding every corner without force. Victoria was in the foyer when Zara walked in. She was on the phone, something about a caterer for a fundraiser she was chairing that weekend. She held up one finger without looking at Zara. The finger said, "Wait." The finger said, "You are not important enough to interrupt this call." Zara waited. She set her bag down by the stairs and folded her hands in front of her. She looked at the foyer. Marble floors, a chandelier that probably cost more than every apartment she had ever rented combined, a vase of white lilies on a table so polished she could see her own reflection in it. Her reflection looked tired. She had taken 2 buses and a train to get here. Victoria ended the call and turned. She looked Zara up and down. One sweep, top to bottom, the kind of look that measures and discards in the same motion. "You are the new one." "Yes, ma'am. Zara Cole." "I know your name. I read the file." Victoria picked up a small cardboard box from the hallway table and handed it to her. "These are yours." Zara opened the box. Inside, a set of plates. White, plain, no pattern. A cup, a bowl. A single set of utensils wrapped in a paper napkin. "Staff meals are taken in the utility room off the kitchen. There is a door at the back of the house. That is your entrance going forward. The front door is for family and guests." Victoria paused. Let the words settle. "Diane will show you where everything is." Zara looked at the box. She looked at Victoria. Her face did not change. "Thank you," she said, and she meant it the way a woman means it when she has learned that arguing with power on the first day costs more than it is worth. Diane appeared from the kitchen, a white woman in her early 50s with reading glasses pushed up on her head and a dish towel over one shoulder. She had worked in the Kang estate for 6 years. She used the front door every morning. She ate breakfast in the kitchen, at the counter, with the good plates. She had never been handed a cardboard box. Diane looked at the box in Zara's hands. Then she looked at Zara. Something passed between them. Not a word, not a nod, just a small tightening around Diane's mouth that said, "I see this, and I am sorry, and I cannot say either of those things out loud." "Come on," Diane said. "I will take you up to Mrs. Kang." They walked up the stairs together. Zara carried her bag and her box. The hallway on the second floor was long, carpeted, lined with photographs in silver frames. Family portraits. Junho as a boy, serious eyes, pressed collar, standing beside a man with the same jaw and the same stillness. His father. Zara would learn later that the elder Mr. Kang had built the shipping company from a single cargo route between Busan and Long Beach. She would learn that he had died 8 years ago in this house, in the same room his wife now occupied, and that Mrs. Kang had refused to change anything about that room except the bed. The door was open. Zara stepped inside, and the first thing she noticed was the light. The curtains were pulled wide, and afternoon sun poured across the floor in long, warm sheets. The second thing she noticed was the smell. Not medicine, not decay, but jasmine. A small ceramic diffuser sat on the nightstand, barely visible between the monitor cables. Mrs. Kang was awake. Her eyes moved to the doorway before Zara crossed the threshold. Dark eyes. Clear. The kind of eyes that had been making assessments long before the body they lived in started failing. "You are Zara," she said. Not a question. "Yes, ma'am." "Sit." There was a chair beside the bed. Zara sat. She did not reach for Mrs. Kang's hand. She did not adjust the blankets. She did not begin performing care. She just sat and waited. And in that single gesture, the willingness to be still, to let silence exist without filling it, something in Mrs. Kang's expression shifted. A faint relaxation around the mouth, a softening of the lines between her brows.
The way a person looks when they have been bracing for something, and it does not come. "They sent 9 before you," Mrs. Kang said. "I heard. Do you know why they left?" Zara held her gaze. "I have my guesses." Mrs. Kang almost smiled. "Almost." "Good. Then I do not need to explain." She turned her head toward the window. The light moved across her face like a slow hand. "I am dying, Zara. Not quickly, not politely. Dying is a mess no one prepares you for. I will need things I am too proud to ask for. You will need to see them without being told. I can do that. I believe you can." Mrs. Kang closed her eyes for a moment. When she opened them, they were sharper than before, focused on something Zara could not see. "My daughter-in-law will make your time here difficult. She has her reasons. None of them are about you. I understand." "No, you do not. Not yet." Mrs. Kang's hand moved across the blanket, slow, deliberate, and came to rest near the edge of the bed, not reaching for Zara, just closer. "But you will." That night, after Zara had settled into the small room off the second-floor landing, not the guest room, never the guest room, a converted storage space with a single window and a bed that creaked every time she shifted, she lay in the dark and listened to the house. The Kang estate made sounds at night. The heating system clicked and sighed through old pipes. A grandfather clock on the first floor marked every hour with a deep, hollow note that vibrated through the floorboards. And somewhere down the hall, behind a closed door, Mrs. Kang coughed, a thin, dry sound that echoed in the silence. Zara got up. She walked down the hall in bare feet, pushed the door open, and found Mrs. Kang on her side, one hand pressed to her chest. The coughing had stopped, but her breathing was uneven, shallow sips of air that were not enough. "Let me adjust the pillows," Zara said. She did not ask permission. She lifted Mrs. Kang's shoulders, so light, so fragile, like holding something made of paper, and repositioned the pillows to elevate her chest. She poured water from the bedside pitcher. She held the cup while Mrs. Kang drank. She waited until the breathing steadied. "Thank you," Mrs. Kang whispered. "Do you want me to stay?" A pause. The kind of pause that holds a war between pride and need. "Yes." Zara pulled the chair closer, She sat. She did not sleep. She listened to Mrs. Kang breathe until the rhythm smoothed out and the room fell into a stillness that felt less like emptiness and more like company. At some point in the deep hours of the night, 2, maybe 3 in the morning, Mrs. Kang spoke without opening her eyes. "There is a drawer," she said, "beside the bed. The bottom one." Zara looked at the nightstand. 3 drawers. She opened the bottom one. Inside, a single business card. White, thick paper. A woman's name. Helen Sue, attorney at law. A phone number. Nothing else. Mrs. Kang's eyes were still closed. "Put it back," she said softly. "That is not for tonight." Zara placed the card back in the drawer and closed it. "When?" Zara asked. Mrs. Kang did not answer for a long time, so long that Zara thought she had fallen asleep. Then, barely above a whisper, 2 words that would sit in Zara's mind for months, growing heavier with each passing week. "Not yet." The months moved the way water moves through cloth, slowly at first, then all at once. By the 3rd week, Zara knew the rhythms of Mrs. Kang's body better than her own. She knew that mornings were the worst, the stiffness, the shallow breathing, the effort it took to sit upright. She knew that afternoons were kinder. She knew that the jasmine diffuser ran out every 4 days and that Mrs. Kang would never ask for it to be refilled, but would grow restless and irritable within an hour of the scent fading. She knew to refill it without mentioning it. She knew that certain silences meant pain, and other silences meant peace. And the difference was in the way Mrs. Kang held her hands, curled inward for pain, open and resting for calm. She knew these things because she paid attention, not the kind of attention that watches for tasks, the kind that watches for the person. I need to pause here. When I wrote this scene, I had to step away. The bond between these 2 women is the foundation everything else rests on. If you feel it, good. That is the point. The bath was a daily ritual, every morning at 7. Zara would run the water, warm, never hot. Mrs. Kang's skin had become too thin for heat, and add 3 drops of an unscented oil that kept the dryness from cracking. She would help Mrs. Kang undress with the kind of care that does not announce itself. No narration, no cheerful commentary. Just hands that knew where to support and where to let go. Mrs. Kang had told her once, during the 2nd week, that the previous caregiver, number 7, had narrated every step out loud. "Now I am going to lift your arm. Now I am going to wash your back. Now I am going to—" Mrs. Kang had stopped her with a look that could have cut steel. "I am dying," she had said. "I am not a child." Zara never narrated. She moved through the bath like a conversation without words, anticipating, adjusting, responding to the small shifts in Mrs. Kang's weight and breath that told her everything language could not. It was during these mornings that Mrs. Kang began to talk, not about her illness, not about pain or fear or the things people expect dying women to talk about. She talked about the house. "My husband built the east wing himself," she said one morning while Zara combed her thinning hair with a wide-tooth comb. "Not designed, built, with his hands." The contractors laughed. A shipping man with a hammer. But he finished it in 4 months. Every joint was perfect.
He said a house should know the hands that made it. Another morning, this kitchen was the reason I agreed to the marriage. A rare flash of humor in her eyes. He proposed in a restaurant. I said no. He brought me here and showed me the kitchen. Italian marble, a stove imported from Lyon. I said yes before he could ask again. And another, her voice quieter now, the words landing heavier.
He told me before he died that this house was not a building. It was a promise that the people who live here would be worthy of the walls. Zara listened. She always listened. And she began to understand that these were not stories, they were instructions. Mrs. Kang was teaching her the weight of this place, brick by brick, room by room, and she was doing it with the patience of a woman who knew exactly how much time she had left. Victoria visited the room every Wednesday and Sunday, 4 minutes each visit. Zara timed it, not on purpose, but her body learned the rhythm. The door would open. Victoria's perfume, something heavy, floral, expensive, would enter the room before she did. She would stand at the foot of the bed. She would ask the same 3 questions in the same order. How are you feeling? Do you need anything? Should I call Dr. Chen? The questions were not questions. They were receipts, proof of attendance, filed away for whoever might ask. Mrs. Kang answered the same way each time. Fine. No, not today. Victoria would nod. She would look at her phone. She would leave. It was performance, efficient, minimal, and completely empty. And it always happened on the days Jun-ho called from overseas to check on his mother. Victoria's visits were not for Mrs. Kang. They were for the phone call that would come 30 minutes later when Jun-ho would ask, "Did you see her today?" And Victoria could answer, "Of course, I was just with her." Diane told Zara about the others, not all at once, in pieces.
Over coffee in the kitchen. The kitchen Zara was not supposed to use. At the counter she was not supposed to sit at. With the cups she was not supposed to touch. Diane broke those rules quietly every morning as her own small rebellion. Number 3 lasted 6 weeks, Diane said, wrapping her hands around her mug. Nice woman, Jamaican. Victoria accused her of stealing a bracelet. Bracelet turned up 2 days later in Victoria's own jewelry box. By then, the woman was already gone. Number 5, a young girl, 23. Mrs. Kang loved her, used to have her read poetry in the evenings. Victoria told Jun-ho the girl was unreliable, called the agency herself and had her reassigned. Number 8, Diane paused, set her coffee down. Number 8 was a retired nurse from Philadelphia, 60 years old, 20 years of experience. Mrs. Kang trusted her more than anyone. Victoria found out the nurse had been helping Mrs. Kang make phone calls, private calls, to people Victoria did not approve of. The nurse was gone within 48 hours. Victoria told Jun-ho she had been caught sleeping on duty. 9 caregivers, 14 months. Every single one removed not because they failed, but because Mrs. Kang liked them, because they got close, because closeness was a threat to the only thing Victoria cared about: control. Zara sipped her coffee. The kitchen was quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator and the distant ticking of the grandfather clock. "Why are you telling me this?" she asked. Diane looked at her for a long time. "Because you are number 10, and she already likes you more than she liked any of them." Zara set the cup down. "Then I will be harder to get rid of." It was not bravado. It was arithmetic. Zara had counted the cost of this job before she took it, the distance from her apartment in Baltimore, the isolation, the live-in requirement that meant she had no space of her own. She had taken it because the pay was steady and because the last 3 jobs had ended when families decided they no longer needed help. which was a polite way of saying they no longer wanted to watch someone die up close. She was tired of being the one left holding the heaviness after everyone else looked away. Mrs. Kang was not looking away. Mrs. Kang was staring directly into the dark and asking Zara to sit beside her while she did it. That was worth something. That was worth the separate plates and the back entrance and the box that Victoria had handed her on the first day, like she was distributing supplies to a relief camp. One evening, in the 4th month, Mrs. Kang asked Zara to open the closet in the corner of her room. Inside, a shelf of photo albums. Old ones, leather-bound, heavy, the kind no one makes anymore. Mrs. Kang asked her to bring the 3rd one from the left. Zara opened it on the bed. The photographs inside were from the 1980s, Mrs. Kang as a young woman standing in front of the estate when it was new. Fresh paint, young trees lining the driveway. A man beside her with sawdust on his sleeves and a grin so wide it barely fit the frame. "He planted every tree on that driveway," Mrs. Kang said. Her fingers hovered above the photograph, but did not touch it. 12 oaks. One for every year I made him wait before I said yes. Zara laughed. A real one. The first real laugh she had let out in this house. Mrs. Kang looked at her. "Good," she said. "You should laugh more. This house has forgotten the sound."
They sat together for another hour, turning pages. Mrs. Kang narrated each photograph, not with nostalgia, but with precision. Who stood where? What year? What deal was being closed? What dinner was being prepared? The house was alive in these pictures, full of people, noise, arguments, celebrations. It had been a place where things happened. Now it was a museum. Quiet, curated, controlled by a woman who had married into it and understood nothing about what it was built to hold. As Zara closed the album and returned it to the shelf, Mrs. Kang spoke again. Her voice had changed, lower, more deliberate, the way it sounded when she was not telling a story but laying a stone. "My son does not know everything I have done." She paused. "And I need it to stay that way. For now." Zara turned. "What do you mean?" But Mrs. Kang's eyes were already closed. Her breathing had shifted into the shallow, steady rhythm of sleep, or the performance of it. Zara stood in the doorway for a long time, watching the rise and fall of the blankets, the thin silver hair against the pillow, the jasmine curling through the air. Something was being built inside this room. She could feel it, the way you feel weather changing. Pressure in the air, a charge before the lightning, the hair on your arms rising for a reason you cannot name. She turned off the bedside lamp and pulled the door halfway closed. And she carried that sentence down the hall with her like a stone in her pocket. Heavy, smooth, impossible to put down. Junho Kang came home on a Thursday in the 5th month. No announcement, no phone call ahead. A black car pulled through the gate at 6 in the morning and stopped at the front steps. The engine cut. One door opened, one door closed, and the house shifted. Zara felt it before she saw him. She was in the kitchen, early, before Diane arrived, heating water for Mrs. Kang's morning tea. The air pressure changed. Something in the frequency of the silence altered, like a room that had been humming at one pitch for months had just been tuned to another. She turned toward the hallway and saw him through the glass panel beside the front door, walking up the steps in a dark wool coat, no luggage, his posture so straight it looked architectural. He came through the door and the foyer felt smaller. Not because he was tall, though he was, 6'1" at least, with the kind of lean build that suggested discipline rather than effort. It was presence. The way certain people enter a room and the room rearranges itself around them. The air moved differently. The light hit differently. Even the grandfather clock seemed to tick quieter, as if it understood this was not a man who tolerated unnecessary noise. His face gave nothing. High cheekbones, a jaw that could have been carved from the same marble in the foyer, dark eyes set deep beneath a brow that carried no expression and needed none. He was handsome the way a locked door is handsome. Something about it makes you want to see what is on the other side, but the handle does not turn. Jun-ho set his keys on the hallway table. He removed his coat. He folded it once, placed it over his arm, and stood for a moment in the quiet of the foyer, breathing in the house like a man checking whether something had been disturbed while he was gone. Victoria descended the stairs 12 minutes later. Zara counted. 12 minutes. Enough time to fix her hair, apply lipstick, change from the oversized shirt she slept in into a fitted dress that suggested she had been awake for hours. "Darling," Victoria kissed his cheek. Her hand rested on his chest, perfectly placed, camera ready. "I did not know you were coming home today." "I did not tell you." The words were flat. No warmth, no accusation, nothing for Victoria to grip onto or push against. Just a fact. Delivered the way he delivered all facts. Clean, precise, with no excess. Victoria's smile held.
Professionals notice when a smile is working harder than it should. Victoria's was sprinting. "Well, let me have Marie prepare breakfast. You must be exhausted." He was already walking toward the stairs. "I am going to see my mother." He did not say good morning. He did not ask about the house, the fundraiser, the renovations Victoria had been posting about on social media for 3 weeks. He moved through her orbit without entering it, a planet that acknowledged the existence of a satellite without adjusting its course by a single degree. Victoria stood in the foyer for a long moment after he disappeared up the stairs. Her hand, the one that had rested on his chest, hung at her side. She flexed her fingers once. Then she turned and walked toward the kitchen, her heels clicking against the marble with a sharpness that had not been there before. Zara was in Mrs. Kang's room when he entered. She was adjusting the pillows, the morning routine, the careful repositioning that made breathing easier. She heard the door open and turned, and for the first time, she was in the same room as Jun-ho Kang. He stopped in the doorway. His eyes went to his mother first. The thinness, the machines, the way her body made so small a shape beneath the blankets. Something crossed his face, fast. A shadow that passed behind his eyes and was gone before it could settle into anything readable. He blinked once. His jaw reset. And the expression was sealed again. Smooth, controlled, impenetrable. Then his gaze moved to Zara. She was still holding a pillow. Her uniform was slightly wrinkled. She'd been up since 5. Her hair was pulled back with a plain elastic band. No makeup, no performance. She looked like what she was, a woman in the middle of work, doing the thing no one else in this house was willing to do. He looked at her for 1 beat, 2. Long enough that Zara felt the weight of it. Not aggressive, not invasive, but thorough. He was reading her the way he probably read everything. Contracts, rooms, people, scanning for what was real and what was not. He said nothing. He walked past her to the bedside. He sat in the chair, Zara's chair, the one she had pulled close months ago and never moved, and he took his mother's hand. Mrs. Kang was awake. Her eyes were on him. She did not smile. She did not need to. The way she looked at her son was beyond smiling. It was the look of a woman who had made peace with most of the world's disappointments, except one. He was the one thing she was not ready to leave behind. Zara stepped back. She moved to the door. As she passed Jun-ho, she caught a scent, clean, subtle,
something that smelled like cold air and cedar and distance. She did not pause. She did not speak. She closed the door behind her and stood in the hallway, the pillow still in her hands. From inside the room, silence. The kind that holds conversations no one else is allowed to hear. Jun-ho stayed for 40 minutes. Zara knew because she was in the hallway the entire time, sitting on the floor with her back against the wall, waiting in case Mrs. Kang needed her. She heard nothing, no voices, no movement, just the monitors and the slow rhythm of a mother and son sharing space for what both of them knew was a shrinking number of remaining times. When the door opened, Jun-ho stepped out. He looked down at Zara. She was still on the floor, legs crossed, hands in her lap. Most people would have stood. Zara did not. She looked up at him from where she was and waited. His mouth moved, not a word. Something he decided against saying. He adjusted something on the bookshelf beside the door. A small motion, precise. His fingers repositioned a decorative object, something between a miniature and a paperweight, by a few centimeters. Then he walked down the hallway without looking back. Zara watched him go. She looked at the bookshelf. The object he had touched was still there. Dark, round, the size of a marble. It had not been there yesterday. She was certain. She noticed things in this hallway the way sailors notice changes in wind, because her work depended on it. That object was new. She did not touch it. She filed it away and moved on. That evening, after Mrs. Kang was settled and the house had grown dark and still, Zara passed through the first-floor hallway on her way to the kitchen. A light was on behind the study door. Jun-ho's study, a room she had never entered and did not intend to. She would have kept walking. She should have kept walking. But a voice stopped her. Not his, another man's. Older, rougher, speaking low and fast. The words were muffled, but one sentence pushed through the heavy oak door with enough force to reach her. "Is it done?" Silence. Then Jun-ho's voice, calm, level, empty of inflection. "It will be, when the time is right." Zara kept walking. Her heart rate had not changed. Her pace had not changed. But the stone in her pocket, the sentence Mrs. Kang had given her weeks ago, the one about things her son did not know, had just grown heavier. In the kitchen, Diane was finishing the last of the dishes. Zara poured herself a glass of water and stood by the sink. "Diane." The hallway outside Mrs. Kang's room, the bookshelf by her door. Was there anything new on it today? Diane dried her hands, thought, shook her head. "I did not notice anything." Zara nodded. She drank her water. She set the glass in the sink. "Zara?" "Yes." Diane folded the dish towel, the one on the oven handle, the one with the small red thread unraveling from the corner that neither of them had gotten around to replacing. She draped it back in its place and looked at Zara with something between caution and care. "Don't ask questions in this house." Zara held her gaze. She nodded once. And she went upstairs to a room that was not hers, in a house that was full of things she was not supposed to see,
carrying a silence that was growing louder by the day. The decline came like a tide pulling back from shore. Not all at once, not with warning, just a slow retreat, each day leaving a little less behind. Mrs. Kang stopped asking for the photo albums. She stopped narrating the house. The stories about her husband and the oak trees and the kitchen that sealed her marriage, they faded into a quiet that had weight to it, like a room where all the furniture has been covered in white sheets. The shape of things was still there, but the color was gone. Her appetite shrank to almost nothing. Half a cup of broth. A spoonful of congee Zara prepared from a recipe Mrs. Kang had dictated during a stronger week. 3 bites, maybe 4. Then the spoon would rest against the edge of the bowl, and Mrs. Kang would close her eyes, not sleeping, just retreating to somewhere internal, somewhere Zara could not follow. The morphine dosage went up twice in 2 weeks. Dr. Chen came on a Tuesday and stood in the hallway afterward with Zara, his voice low, his hands in his coat pockets. "Weeks," he said, "not months." Zara nodded. She had known before he said it. The body tells you, in the way the skin thins, the way the breath shortens, the way the hands stop reaching for things. Mrs. Kang's hands had been still for 3 days. Victoria began making phone calls. Not from the house. She drove to the end of the street and sat in her parked car, windows up, phone pressed to her ear. Zara noticed this on a Monday, then again on a Wednesday, then Friday. 3 calls in 1 week, each lasting 20 to 30 minutes, each ending with Victoria checking her face in the rearview mirror before driving back through the gate. Diane noticed too. "She is calling Graham Holt," Diane said over their morning coffee. "The family lawyer. I picked up the kitchen extension last week by accident and heard his voice before I hung up." "What were they discussing?" Diane shook her head. "I only heard 4 words before I put the phone down." "What 4 words?" Diane looked at her coffee. "Once she is gone." Zara set her cup down. The ceramic made a small, sharp sound against the counter. Neither of them spoke for a long time. Later that afternoon, Zara was changing the sheets on Mrs. Kang's bed, lifting the old woman gently, supporting her shoulders with one arm while she pulled the fresh linen beneath her with the other. When Mrs. Kang's hand closed around her wrist, not the weak, trembling grip of recent weeks, this was something else. This was the grip of a woman reaching back through her own exhaustion to seize something urgent. "Zara, I am here. My bag, the one in the closet, inside pocket." Zara laid her back against the pillows and went to the closet. A leather handbag, old, well-kept, the kind of bag that becomes more beautiful as it ages. She opened the inside pocket. Her fingers found an envelope. White. Sealed. No name on the front. She brought it back. Mrs. Kang did not take it. She pushed it toward Zara with a flat palm. "This is yours now." "Mrs. Kang, I cannot listen to me." The old woman's voice was thin as thread, but the steel inside it had not rusted. "Do not open this until they make you leave. Do you understand? Until they make you leave." "No one is making me leave." Mrs. Kang's eyes were dry and sharp as broken glass. The morphine had not dulled them. Nothing had dulled them. "They will. After I am gone, they will. And when they do, you open that envelope. Not before. Not a day before." She paused, drew a breath that cost her something. "Promise me." Zara looked at the envelope in her hands. Light, thin. Nothing about it suggested the weight it would carry. "I promise. Put it somewhere safe, somewhere she will not find it." Zara slipped the envelope into the front pocket of her uniform, the small pocket over her heart that she never used for anything because it was too shallow for a phone and too narrow for a pen.
The envelope fit perfectly, as if the pocket had been waiting for it. Mrs. Kang watched her do this. Something shifted in her expression, a softening, a release. The look of a woman who has placed the last piece on a board no one else can see. "You are the only person in this house," Mrs. Kang said, "who never wanted anything from me." Her voice was barely above a breath now. "That is why it has to be you." Zara sat on the edge of the bed. She did not cry. She did not ask what was inside. She placed her hand over Mrs. Kang's, gently, the way you hold something that is precious and temporary and already half gone. They stayed like that until the light in the room changed from gold to amber to grey. That night, Jun-ho appeared. He had been in his study for most of the day. Zara had heard his footsteps in the hallway twice, both times pausing outside his mother's door, both times continuing without entering. But at 10 in the evening, after Victoria had retired to the east wing and the house had settled into its nighttime stillness, the door to Mrs. Kang's room opened. Zara was in her own room. She heard it through the wall, the soft click, the creak of the chair being pulled close, the murmur of voices too low to separate into words. She lay in the dark and listened without listening. It was not her conversation. It was not her right. But something changed in the house that night. She felt it the way you feel a bridge shift beneath your feet. The same structure, the same path, but the load-bearing calculus has changed, and you cannot tell yet whether it will hold. The conversation lasted an hour, maybe longer. Zara drifted in and out, not sleeping, just hovering at the edge of consciousness, where sounds become textures instead of words. Then the door opened again. Footsteps in the hallway. They stopped outside Zara's room. 1 breath. 2. And then they moved on. Down the hall, down the stairs, into the study where the lock turned with a decisive click.
Zara opened her eyes. The ceiling was dark. The house was still. But something had shifted. Something load-bearing. Something fundamental. And the man who had just walked past her door was carrying the weight of it in a way that had changed his footsteps. They were heavier than when he went in. Mrs. Kang died 3 days later, a Tuesday, 2:14 a.m. The monitors did not scream, they simply changed their tone, a long, steady note replacing the rhythmic beeping, a sound that was somehow quieter than the silence that preceded it. Zara was holding her hand. She had been holding it since midnight. Not because Mrs. Kang had asked, she was beyond asking by then, her breath coming in long intervals that stretched like taffy, each one thinner than the last. Zara held her hand because that was what you do. You hold on. You bear witness. You make sure that when the last breath comes, someone is there to notice. The hand in hers went still. The monitors sang their single note. The jasmine in the diffuser had run out 2 hours ago and no one had refilled it. The room smelled like clean sheets and medicine and the particular emptiness that fills a space when a person leaves it for the last time. Zara pressed Mrs. Kang's hand to her own forehead. She held it there. She breathed. Then she reached over and turned off the monitor. The room went silent, truly silent. The kind of silence that has a physical presence, that sits on your chest and makes you aware of your own heartbeat because it is the only sound left. Victoria was asleep in the east wing. She would not know until morning. Jun-ho was on the 3rd floor. He already knew. He knew because the cameras, the ones no one knew about, the ones his mother had ordered installed in the weeks when she still had the strength to make phone calls and give instructions, showed him everything. The room, the monitors, the woman holding his mother's hand in the dark, the steady, unhurried care of someone who had not looked away once. He sat in his 3rd-floor room, watching the feed on his phone, and he did not move for a very long time. When he finally set the phone down, his face was dry. His hands were steady. But something in his posture had changed. A settling, a collapsing inward, the way a building looks in the moment after the demolition charges fire and before the structure begins to fall. His mother was gone. The promise was live. and the woman who had held her hand was still sitting in the dark, holding a hand that would never close around hers again. Victoria moved before the body was cold. That was not a figure of speech. At 6:47 a.m., less than 5 hours after Mrs. Kang's heart stopped, Victoria was in the study with her phone pressed to her ear and a legal pad covered in handwriting. The coroner had not yet arrived. Diane was still preparing the front room. Zara was still upstairs cleaning Mrs. Kang's room with the slow, reverent care of someone performing a ritual rather than a task. And Victoria was already on her second call to Graham Holt. "I need the trust documents today, Graham, not tomorrow. Today." A pause. Whatever Holt said made Victoria's jaw tighten. "Because she is gone. As of last night. Which means the timeline we discussed is now active." Another pause. "No, I do not need Junho's signature for the preliminary review. I need access to the estate file, the original one, the one in the safe." She hung up. She looked at the ceiling for a moment, not grief, not reflection, just calculation. The look of a woman counting moves on a board. By noon, Victoria had contacted a real estate assessor, a private banker, and her own mother. The real estate call lasted 8 minutes. The banking call lasted 12. The call to her mother lasted 4, and the only words Zara caught as she passed through the hallway were, "It is happening, exactly as we planned." Junho was in the house. He had been in the house all morning, but he had not come downstairs.
He had not spoken to Victoria. He had not spoken to anyone. His study door was closed. His footsteps moved from the 3rd floor to the 2nd floor and back again, pacing a route that Zara had memorized by sound alone. Each pass took him past his mother's room. Each pass slowed outside the door. He never entered. The funeral was arranged in 2 days. Private, small, by Victoria's design. "Family only," she told the funeral director, standing in the foyer in a black dress that fit her like it had been waiting in the closet for this occasion. "No outside guests. No public announcement." Mrs. Kang's friends were not contacted. Her bridge partner of 20 years did not receive a call. The woman from her church group, who had visited every Saturday until Victoria banned the visits, she heard nothing. The funeral was sealed shut by Victoria's hands, and the only people in attendance were Victoria, Junho, Diane, 3 staff members, and Zara. Zara attended because Junho told her to, not asked, told. One sentence, delivered in the hallway outside his mother's room the morning of the service. "You will be there." It was not a question. It was not a request. It was the first full sentence he had spoken to her since arriving home, and it carried the weight of something final. She nodded. He walked away. At the service, Victoria sat in the front row. She held a handkerchief she never used. She dabbed at eyes that were dry. The performance was immaculate. The lowered gaze, the slight tremble of the lip, the hand resting on the casket for 3 seconds as they passed. Anyone watching would have believed her. Junho stood apart. He did not sit. He stood at the back of the room with his hands at his sides and his eyes fixed on the casket with an expression that was not grief. Grief is soft. Grief moves through the body. Whatever was on Junho's face was rigid, held in place by force, like a door bolted shut against a storm. Zara stood beside Diane. Neither of them spoke. Neither of them performed. Diane cried, quiet, real tears that she wiped with the back of her hand. Zara did not cry. Not because she did not feel it, because the weight of it was below tears. It lived in the bones, in the space behind the ribs, in the pocket over her heart where the envelope sat. Still sealed, still waiting. The house after the funeral was worse than the house during the illness. At least during the illness, there was purpose. There was a rhythm. The bath, the tea, the pillow adjustment, the midnight vigil. Now there was nothing. Mrs. Kang's room had been cleared of medical equipment within 24 hours. Victoria had ordered it done while Jun-ho was in his study. The monitors, the morphine stand, the hospital bed, all removed. Replaced with the original mahogany four-poster that had been stored in the basement, as if the dying had never happened, as if it could be redecorated away. Zara's usefulness was now a question. Victoria did not raise it immediately. She let 2 days pass. 3. She let the silence build the way a prosecutor lets a witness sit in an empty room, not because there is nothing to say, but because the waiting itself is a tool. On the 4th day after the funeral, Victoria called Zara into the study. "Sit down." Zara sat. The study was cold. The heating vent had been closed, or it had broken, or Victoria had adjusted it on purpose. Zara kept her hands in her lap. "As you know, Mrs. Kang's care was the basis of your employment here." Victoria's voice was professional, rehearsed. "With her passing, that basis no longer exists." "I understand. Additionally, I have received a report from Dr. Chen indicating a discrepancy in the medication log. Specifically, a missing entry for morphine administration on the 14th of last month." Zara's stomach tightened. There was no discrepancy. She had logged every dose, every time, every milligram. She had been meticulous about it because she had known from the first week, that precision was her only armor in a house where the truth could be rewritten by anyone with more power than her. "I logged every administration," Zara said. "The log disagrees." "Then the log has been changed." Victoria's eyes narrowed. The room grew colder, and this time it had nothing to do with the heating vent. "Be very careful, Zara." "I am being careful. I am telling you the truth." Victoria closed the folder on her desk. "Your employment is terminated, effective immediately." "You have 10 minutes to collect your belongings." That was 11:38 p.m. The rain had been falling since 9. What followed was what the opening of this story showed you. The garbage bags, the gravel, the barefoot walk to the gate while Victoria stood on the porch in silk and the guards pretended not to see. The laughter, the locked gate, the dark street. The 6-block walk to a gas station with no shoes and no money and no plan. Nothing except 2 bags, a soaked uniform, and an envelope she had promised not to open until this exact moment. Now you know what led to the beginning. Now you understand why she walked through that gate without looking back. Not because she was defeated, but because she had made a promise to a dead woman, and the dead woman had been right. They made her leave, exactly as she said they would. What you do not know yet, what Zara herself did not know as she stood under the fluorescent gas station light with rain running down her face and gravel cuts stinging on the soles of her feet, was what was inside that envelope. And what was inside that envelope was not what she expected. Not what anyone would have expected. Because Mrs. Kang had not spent her final months saying goodbye. She had spent them building something, piece by piece, document by document, meeting by meeting, in the hours when Victoria assumed she was sleeping and Jun-ho assumed she was fading. The dead woman had been playing a game that none of them could see, and the first move of her endgame was sitting in a wet envelope in the pocket of a woman standing barefoot at a gas station at midnight. Zara pulled it out. She looked at the seal, softened by rain but intact. She slid her finger beneath the flap. She opened it. I know some of you already see where this is going. You don't. Not yet. The motel room cost $43. Zara paid with a card she was not sure would clear. It cleared. She locked the door, set the garbage bags on the floor, sat on the edge of the bed,
and looked at the contents of the envelope under the yellow light of a lamp with a crooked shade. It was not a deed. It was not money. It was not a will. It was a letter, handwritten, 3 pages. Mrs. Kang's writing, small, careful, every character formed with the discipline of a woman who had grown up in a country where penmanship was an act of respect. The letter was not addressed to Zara. It was addressed to Victoria. Zara read it twice. The first time her hands were shaking. The second time they were still. Mrs. Kang had written the letter over the course of several weeks. That much was clear. The ink changed twice, the pressure of the pen shifted between sections, and there were 3 different dates noted in the margins. It was not a letter of anger. It was not a goodbye. It was an accounting. A precise, methodical, devastating accounting of everything Victoria had done inside the walls of the Kang estate for 4 years. Every caregiver she had fired, with dates, with the lies she had told Junho to justify each dismissal. Every visit to Mrs. Kang's room, logged by duration. 4 minutes, 4 minutes, 4 minutes. Pages of 4-minute entries stacked like evidence in a courtroom. The phone calls to Graham Holt. The conversations overheard by Diane, who, it turned out, had been reporting to Mrs. Kang every week. Not spying, witnessing. Diane had not been a housekeeper who happened to overhear. She had been a pair of eyes in a house full of closed doors, placed there by a woman who understood that power requires information, and information requires loyalty. The separate plates, the back entrance, the text message, that is what we pay the help for, documented with the date, the time, and the phone it was sent from. At the bottom of the 3rd page, Mrs. Kang had written a single line, underlined once. My lawyer has the rest. Her name is on the back of this page. Zara turned the page over. A name. Helen Sue, attorney at law. The same name as the business card in the nightstand drawer, the one Mrs. Kang had shown her months ago and said, not yet. A phone number. And beneath the phone number, one word in Mrs. Kang's handwriting, pressed into the paper with enough force to leave an indent. Tomorrow. Zara set the letter down on the bedspread. She stared at it. The rain was still hitting the motel window in uneven bursts, the kind that sound like someone tapping their fingers on glass, impatient and irregular. The letter was not for Zara to deliver. She understood that now. The letter was for Zara to hold, to know, to carry as proof of what had been done, not to her, but to every woman who had walked through that gate before her. 9 caregivers. 9 women hired to care for a dying woman and removed because caring was dangerous in that house. Because caring meant closeness, and closeness meant someone might see what Victoria was doing. Mrs. Kang had seen all of it. From her bed, through her morphine haze, through her pain and her exhaustion and the indignity of needing help to sit upright. She had seen everything, and she had written it down. Zara picked up her phone. She dialed the number on the back of the page. It was 1:47 a.m. The phone rang once, twice. A woman's voice answered on the 3rd ring, clear, alert, as if she had been sitting beside the phone with her hand resting on it. Ms. Cole. Zara's breath caught. You know my name. I have been expecting your call, though I hoped it would not come this late, which means they acted faster than Mrs. Kang predicted. A brief pause, businesslike, warm at the edges. Can you come to my office in the morning? 9 o'clock. I will send the address to this number. What is this about? It is about the house, Ms. Cole. And it is about what Mrs. Kang spent the last 5 months of her life making sure would happen. The line went quiet. Not disconnected,
just waiting. Helen Sue was the kind of woman who used silence as a tool.
And the silence said, "The rest of this conversation happens in person." "I will be there," Zara said. "Good. Bring the letter. And, Ms. Cole."
"Yes?"
"Do not contact anyone at the Kang estate between now and 9 o'clock. No one. That is important." The call ended. Zara set the phone on the nightstand beside the lamp with the crooked shade. She lay down on the bed in her damp uniform. She did not sleep. She stared at the ceiling and listened to the rain and held the letter against her chest and waited for morning the way you wait for a verdict, knowing that whatever comes next, the world you walked into this room with is not the world you will walk out into. At 8:56 a.m., Zara stood in front of a brownstone office on a tree-lined street 4 miles from the motel. The rain had stopped. The sky was the color of wet cement. Her shoes, a pair of flip-flops from the gas station, made a soft slapping sound on the stone steps. She was still wearing the uniform. She had nothing else. The door opened before she knocked. Helen Sue was a Korean woman in her late 50s. Sharp suit, silver at the temples, glasses on a chain around her neck that she never actually wore on her face. Her office was small, precise, every surface organized with the kind of order that suggested a mind that did not tolerate ambiguity. "Sit," Helen said, not unkindly. Zara sat. Helen opened a file, thick, tabbed, flagged with colored stickers. She set it on the desk between them and folded her hands. "Mrs. Kang retained me 5 months before her death. She came to me through a referral from a former colleague of her late husband, someone outside the family's legal circle, outside Graham Holt's reach, and outside anything Victoria had access to." She paused, let the words land. "Over the course of those 5 months, Mrs. Kang and I met 14 times, always during hours when Victoria believed she was asleep. Twice, your colleague Diane drove Mrs. Kang to this office in her own car." Zara blinked. Diane, the housekeeper who used the front door. The woman who poured her coffee every morning and folded the dish towel with the red thread and told her not to ask questions. Diane had been driving a dying woman to secret legal meetings in a personal vehicle. "During those meetings," Helen continued, "Mrs. Kang restructured the family trust. She amended the estate plan, and she executed a transfer of the deed to the primary residence, the Kang estate, into a new independent trust." The room was very quiet. Zara could hear her own pulse in her ears. "The sole beneficiary of that trust," Helen said, "is you." Zara did not move. She did not speak. The words entered her mind and sat there, enormous, impossible, refusing to be absorbed. "The transfer is legally complete, signed by Mrs. Kang, notarized, witnessed by 3 independent parties, none of whom have any connection to the Kang family. Graham Holt was excluded from every meeting, every document, every signature. He does not know this trust exists." "That is not—" Zara's voice cracked. She stopped, started again. "That is not possible." "It is possible. It is done. And it is airtight." Helen pushed the file closer. "But there is a condition." Of course there was a condition. Nothing Mrs. Kang did was simple. Nothing she built had only one wall. "The trust contains a behavioral clause. Specifically, the full transfer of the deed activates only if the surviving spouse or any resident of the estate engages in a documented act of hostility toward you. Termination without cause, physical removal from the premises, destruction of personal property, public humiliation. Any of these, documented on camera or in writing, triggers the full and irrevocable transfer." The cameras. The ones installed 5 weeks before that night. The ones Mrs. Kang ordered. The ones recording the gate, the driveway, the porch, the 3rd-floor window.
Victoria throwing Zara out in the rain. The garbage bags, the bare feet, the laughter.
The burned sheets was not just cruelty. It was activation. Every second of it captured, every word on record, every condition met. Mrs. Kang had not spent her final months dying. She had spent them building a trap so precise that the only person who could spring it was the person who could not help herself from being cruel. Victoria's own nature was the mechanism. Her cruelty was the key, and she had turned it herself in front of 4 cameras at 11:47 p.m. in the rain. Zara did not cry. She did not gasp. She set the documents down on the table and straightened them until all 4 corners lined up. Then she asked Helen where the nearest place to get coffee was. Helen almost smiled. And then the door to the office opened behind them. Zara turned. Junho Kang stood in the doorway. Dark coat, hands at his sides. His face was unreadable, the same locked door expression he had worn since the first time she saw him in his mother's room. But his eyes, something in his eyes was different today. Heavier, older. The eyes of a man who had kept a promise that cost him more than anyone would ever know. He looked at Zara. He did not apologize. He did not explain. He said 5 words. She made me promise. And Zara understood. The window, the night in the rain, the stillness, the 4 words he spoke into his phone after watching her walk through the gate. They were not indifference. They were compliance. His mother had made him swear to let it happen, to let Victoria act, to let the cruelty play out without interference, because interference would have voided the clause. His protection would have destroyed the very thing his mother built to protect Zara permanently. He had watched a good woman get thrown into the rain, and he had done nothing, because doing nothing was the hardest thing his mother had ever asked of him, and he had done it anyway. The object on the bookshelf, the one he adjusted in Chapter 4. Zara understood it now. A camera, small, dark, resolved to face the hallway, the door, the space where his mother lived, and where the truth of what happened inside those walls needed to be preserved. He had not placed it for surveillance. He had placed it because his mother asked him to. One more piece on a board only she could see. Helen closed the file. The documentation is complete. The transfer is recorded with the county. Victoria Kang has no legal claim to the property as of 11:47 p.m. last night. The cameras confirm the triggering event. The clause is satisfied. Zara looked at Junho. He looked back. Neither of them spoke. The silence between them was not empty. It was full of the kind of understanding that does not need words, because words would only make it smaller. He turned and left. The door closed behind him. Zara sat in the quiet office with the file in front of her and the coffee growing cold, and the letter from a dead woman still pressed against her heart. She owned the house. Victoria found out at 2:17 p.m. The call came from Graham Holt. His voice, normally smooth, carefully modulated, the voice of a man who charged $400 an hour and believed he was worth $5, had a crack in it, a hairline fracture running through every word. We need to meet today. It concerns the house. Victoria laughed. She was in the master bathroom, applying a second coat of something to her eyelids, leaning toward the mirror with the focus of a woman who treated beauty as both weapon and armor. What about it? It is mine. The pause that followed was too long. A lawyer who pauses that long is not gathering his thoughts. He is gathering his nerve. That, Holt said, is what we need to discuss. Victoria was at his office within the hour. Holt was behind his desk, a mahogany piece that cost almost as much as his car, surrounded by framed photographs of himself at charity events and law school reunions. He did not stand when she entered. That was the first sign. He slid a file across the desk.
Victoria opened it. She read the first page. She turned to the second. By the third page, the color had drained from her face, the way light drains from a room when the power cuts. All at once, no warning. Total. "This is not legal," she said. Her voice was flat, controlled. But her hands were gripping the edge of the desk hard enough to whiten her knuckles. "It is legal. It is airtight. I have had 2 associates review it this morning, and both confirmed the transfer is valid, the trust is properly executed, and the behavioral clause has been activated." "By whom?" "By you, Victoria." She stood. The chair scraped against the hardwood floor with a sound like a small animal screaming. "That house is in my husband's name. His mother had no authority to—" "She did." Holt removed his glasses and set them on the desk. "The estate was held in a family trust established by the late Mr. Kang. The trust granted Mrs. Kang co-signatory authority on all property decisions. That authority was never revoked. I checked this morning. It should have been reviewed after Mr. Kang's death. It was not. The oversight is significant." "Your oversight, Graham?" "Yes." He did not flinch. He did not look away, but the crack in his voice had spread. "My oversight." Victoria walked to the window. She pressed her fingers against the glass. Her reflection stared back. Perfect hair, perfect makeup, perfect dress. The surface held. Beneath it, something was fracturing at a speed she could not calculate. "Who is the beneficiary?" Holt hesitated, 1 second too long. "The caregiver, Zara Cole." Victoria did not scream. She did not throw anything. She turned from the window and looked at Graham Holt with an expression that was worse than rage. It was contempt. Pure, distilled, absolute. The look of a woman who had trusted a system and the system had betrayed her. "Fix it." "Victoria, fix it, Graham. That is what I pay you for." "The documents are filed. The clause is activated." The cameras. What cameras? And that single question was the moment Graham Holt understood how deep this went. He told her about the cameras, about the server, about the footage of the night she threw Zara out. Every frame, every word, every laugh preserved in a legal file that was already part of the trust documentation. He told her about Helen Sue, about the 14 meetings, about Diane. Victoria's face went through something Zara would never see, but Holt would never forget. He described it later to a colleague as watching a building realize it was on fire. The first second of recognition, the rapid calculation, the understanding that there is no exit that does not involve damage. Victoria drove home. She drove fast. She walked through the front door and went straight to the 3rd floor. Jun-ho was in the sitting room adjacent to his study. A glass of water on the side table. No phone, no laptop. Just him, sitting in a leather chair by the window, looking at the driveway through the same glass he had watched from the night of the rain. Victoria entered without knocking. She stood in the center of the room. Her chest was rising and falling faster than she could control. Her mascara had smudged at the corner of one eye. The first time Zara had ever seen, or anyone had ever seen, Victoria Kang with an imperfection she had not curated. "You knew." He did not deny it. He did not look away. He turned his gaze from the window to his wife and looked at her with the calm, level attention of a man who had been waiting for this conversation for a very long time. "I knew." "Your mother." "My mother watched you." His voice was quiet, not soft,
quiet. The difference is control. She watched you fire 9 women whose only crime was being kind to her. She watched you visit her room for 4 minutes at a time on the days I called, only on the days I called. She watched you make phone calls from your car about the estate before she was cold.
That is not, she read the documents you left on the desk in the study. He paused, let the weight of it settle. You left them open, Victoria, face up, in a house with staff. Powerful men, she had learned, always forgot that the people who cleaned their offices also read everything left on their desks. Victoria's mouth opened, closed, opened again. She documented everything. The plates you gave Zara, the entrance you assigned her, the text you sent when she asked you to sit with her. He recited the words from memory, flat, precise, no emotion. That is what we pay the help for. Victoria flinched. For the first time, a small involuntary movement, a contraction of the shoulders, a pulling inward, as if the words had a physical weight she had not expected. She gave Diane instructions. She arranged the cameras. She met with a lawyer I did not choose and she did not tell me about until 3 days before she died. He stopped. His jaw worked once. The muscle in his cheek flexed and released. She told me on a Tuesday night. She sat me down and she explained every piece of what she had built. And then she asked me to do one thing. What? Nothing. His eyes were dry, but the word landed heavy. She asked me to do nothing. To let you act. To let you be exactly who you are, without interference, without warning, without protection. Because your nature was the trigger, Victoria. Your cruelty was the mechanism. And the only way the clause would activate was if you did what she knew you would do. The room was very still. I stood at that window, he said. I watched you throw a woman into the rain who had held my mother's hand while she died. I watched you laugh. I watched you tell Marcus to burn the sheets. And I did not move, because my mother asked me not to. He reached into the inner pocket of his jacket and placed a single piece of paper on the side table beside his water glass. He slid it toward Victoria with one finger. Divorce terms. You have 72 hours. Victoria looked at the paper. She did not touch it. I will fight this. You will lose. The house is not yours. It was never yours. And after what the cameras recorded, no court in this state will entertain your claim. He picked up his glass of water, took one sip, set it down. Graham Holt has been served separately. His involvement in the estate planning, or rather, his failure to review the co-signatory provisions, combined with the evidence that he was coordinating with you regarding the trust before my mother's death, that is a matter for the Bar Association now. Victoria's legs gave, not dramatically, not a collapse, just a slow, graceless folding, her knees bending, her hand reaching for the arm of a chair she barely reached in time. She sat. She pressed both palms flat against her thighs. She breathed. She was not crying. Crying would have meant feeling something. What was on her face was calculation, rapid, desperate, running through every option and finding each one sealed shut. Every door she reached for had been locked from the inside by a woman who had been dying in a bed 2 floors below her. Jun-ho stood. He buttoned his jacket. He looked at Victoria one final time, and there was nothing in his eyes. Not anger, not satisfaction, not even relief. Just the quiet exhaustion of a man who had watched a fire burn itself out and now had to walk through the ash. He walked to the door. He paused with his hand on the frame. My mother asked me to give you a message, he said. She said you would understand it. Victoria looked up. She said, 4 minutes was never enough. He left the room. His footsteps faded down the hall, steady, even, unhurried.
the same pace as always. The house absorbed the sound the way it absorbed everything, silently, completely, without giving anything back. Victoria sat alone in the room for a long time. The divorce terms lay untouched on the side table.
The light through the window shifted from afternoon gold to the thin gray of approaching dusk. She did not touch the paper. But she did not leave the room either. The legal machinery moved with the cold efficiency of something that had been designed to move exactly this fast and no faster. Helen Sue had built the trust the way Mrs. Kang had built her life, with precision, with patience, and with an understanding that systems only work when every joint is tested before the weight comes down. Victoria challenged the transfer on a Wednesday. Her new attorney, not Graham Holt, who was now facing his own problems, filed a motion contesting the validity of the behavioral clause. The argument was creative. A clause triggered by subjective behavior, the filing claimed, was too vague to be enforceable. Hostility is a matter of interpretation. Termination of an employee is a normal business decision. The footage, the attorney argued, showed an employer exercising her rights within the household. Helen Sue responded with 47 pages, not a brief, a dismantling. Each piece of footage time-stamped and cross-referenced with the specific language of the clause. The garbage bags, documented. The bare feet, documented. The locked gate and the 15-second delay before opening it, documented. The instruction to burn the sheets, the laughter, the canceled paycheck. Each item matched to the clause like a key sliding into a lock that had been cut to receive it. The motion was denied in 9 days. The judge's written opinion was 3 paragraphs. The third paragraph contained a single sentence that would become the only sentence Victoria would remember from the entire proceeding. The respondent's own conduct constitutes the most compelling evidence against her position. Victoria appealed. The appeal was denied in 14 days. The appellate court noted that the trust had been executed in full compliance with state law, that the behavioral clause was sufficiently specific given the documented evidence, and that the co-signatory authority under the original family trust had never been revoked or modified. The opinion cited Graham Holt's failure to review these provisions as a contributing factor, a professional lapse that was, the court observed, now the subject of a separate disciplinary proceeding. Graham Holt's disbarment hearing began 3 weeks later. The evidence was not complicated. He had accessed the estate file on Victoria's behalf before Mrs. Kang's death. He had discussed the trust timeline with Victoria while his client, Mrs. Kang, was still alive. He had failed to disclose a conflict of interest, and he had neglected to review the co-signatory authority that would have revealed the vulnerability in the estate structure, a vulnerability he would have been required to address had he been doing his job instead of coordinating with Victoria. Holt did not contest the charges. He resigned from the bar voluntarily, which is the legal profession's equivalent of walking out of a building before someone sets it on fire. Dignified in appearance, desperate in fact. The Ashfords, Victoria's family, released a statement through a publicist. The statement expressed sympathy for all parties and wished everyone well. It did not mention Victoria by name. It did not offer support. It did not offer money. The Ashfords had lost their own fortune years ago and had survived on the social capital of proximity to wealth. Victoria's marriage to June Ho had been their last investment. It had just defaulted. Victoria moved out of the Kang estate on a Sunday. She packed her own bags, real luggage this time, matched sets, monogrammed. No one carried them for her. The staff had been given the day off. Diane, who had requested the day off herself, unprompted, was not present. The gate opened without delay when Victoria drove through it. No one watched from the porch. No one stood at a third-floor window. The driveway was empty. The cameras, still running, recorded a black SUV pulling through the gate and turning left onto the main road and disappearing behind the row of oaks that lined the property. 12 trees. One for every year Mrs. Kang made her husband wait before she said yes. Victoria's tires rolled over the gravel where Zara had walked barefoot. The rain from that night was long gone. The footprints had been washed away weeks ago. But the driveway remembered. The way all surfaces remember the weight placed upon them, even after the marks have faded. Zara moved in on a Tuesday, the same day of the week she had first arrived, 11 months earlier, with a scuffed navy bag and a zipper that stuck. This time she came through the front door. No one handed her a box of separate plates. No one directed her to a back entrance. She walked through the foyer, marble floors, chandelier, the table where the white lilies used to sit. And she set her bag down at the base of the stairs and stood there for a moment, breathing. The house was quiet. Not the oppressive quiet of Victoria's reign, the curated silence, the controlled atmosphere, the stillness of a space where every sound was monitored and every footstep was noticed. This was a different quiet, open, waiting. The quiet of a house that had just exhaled after holding its breath for years. Diane was in the kitchen. She had returned the morning after Victoria left, let herself in with her own key, started the coffee, and begun cleaning as if nothing had changed. When Zara walked in, Diane looked up from the counter, pushed her reading glasses onto her forehead, and nodded once. "The coffee is fresh," she said. "Thank you, Diane." "Do not thank me. Thank her." They both knew which her she meant. Zara kept Diane on. Full salary, front door, good plates. The same arrangement Diane had always deserved and had always, quietly, been denied the satisfaction of having officially recognized. Zara changed nothing in Mrs. Kang's room. The mahogany four-poster stayed. The curtains stayed open, always open. The jasmine diffuser sat on the nightstand, empty now, but Zara refilled it the first evening. 3 drops of unscented oil. The scent filled the room the way it always had. Slow, steady, finding every corner without force. She sat in the chair beside the bed, the same chair, the one she had pulled close on her first night in this house and never moved. She sat there for 20 minutes and did nothing. She did not think about the legal proceedings or the cameras or the envelope or the claws. She thought about a thin hand gripping her wrist. She thought about a voice saying, "That is why it has to be you." She thought about a woman who had spent the last 5 months of her life not dying, but building, laying stones, one after another, with a patience and precision that defied everything her body was doing to her. The light changed, afternoon to amber, amber to gray. The house settled around her the way a coat settles on shoulders, familiar, warm, meant to be there. Jun-ho handled the divorce the way he handled everything, clean, precise, no spectacle, no public cruelty. Victoria received what she had brought into the marriage, which was very little, and relinquished all claims to the Kang estate, the family trust, and any future interest in Kang family holdings. She signed on the 61st hour of the 72 she was given. The final hour would have triggered a different clause, one Jun-ho had added himself, without his mother's instruction, in the days after the funeral. He never told anyone what that clause contained. He never had to. The papers were filed, the marriage dissolved. 5 years reduced to a signature and a date stamp. Jun-ho came to the house one evening after the divorce was finalized. He did not call ahead. He stood in the doorway of the front entrance, the same doorway he had walked through 100 times, in a house his father had built with his own hands. And he looked at Zara. She was on the porch, sitting in a chair she had moved from the study, watching the driveway. It was raining. Light this time, a soft mist that made the oak trees look like they were breathing.
She was wearing shoes. That detail mattered more than anything else in the frame. She was wearing shoes on her own porch, watching rain fall on a driveway she owned. He stood in the doorway. She sat in the chair. The distance between them was 10 feet and 11 months, and a promise he had kept at a cost no one would ever fully understand. "You could have stopped her that night," Zara said. She did not look at him. He nodded. "And you would never have owned this house." The rain filled the silence between them. It was not an uncomfortable silence. It was the kind of silence that exists between two people who understand the same thing at the same depth and do not need to perform that understanding for each other. She did not invite him in. He did not ask. He stood for another moment. Then he turned and walked down the steps, through the rain, past the oaks, through the gate that opened without delay and closed behind him without sound. Zara watched him go, from the porch where she was sitting, in her house. The cameras were still running, but they were hers now, too. 6 months moved through the house like seasons through a garden, slowly, visibly, each one leaving the place slightly different than it found it. Zara turned Mrs. Kang's room into a reading room. The mahogany 4-poster was removed, carefully, respectfully, piece by piece, and placed in climate-controlled storage because some things deserve to be preserved even when they are no longer needed. In its place, bookshelves, floor to ceiling, warm wood.
Filled not with the leather-bound decorative volumes that wealthy homes display like furniture, but with real books. Read books. Books with cracked spines and dog-eared pages and notes in the margins. Books about care, about medicine, about grief and recovery and the slow, unglamorous work of putting people back together. The curtains stayed open. The jasmine diffuser stayed on the nightstand, now a reading table, and Zara refilled it every 4 days without thinking about it. The scent had become part of the room's identity, the way a voice becomes part of a house long after the person it belonged to has gone. Diane stayed. She ran the household with the quiet authority of someone who had always known how things should work and had simply been waiting for permission to do them properly. She used the front door. She ate at the kitchen counter. She replaced the dish towel, the one with the red thread unraveling from the corner. The new one was plain white. No thread, no fraying. Zara noticed the change and said nothing. Diane noticed Zara noticing and also said nothing. Some conversations between women who have survived the same house do not require words. Zara did not rest. She had never been someone who rested well, not because she did not need it, but because stillness had always felt like something she could not afford. There was always the next shift, the next patient, the next family that needed someone to hold the weight they could not carry themselves. The house gave her, for the first time, the space to redirect that energy from survival towards something larger. She started the agency in the 3rd month. It began with a phone call, a woman she had known from her certification program in Baltimore. A caregiver, 61 years old, recently let go from a private home because the family decided to go in a different direction, which was code for the same thing it always was. Zara offered her a contract. Then another woman. Then a man, a retired EMT who had shifted into elder care and kept getting passed over by agencies that preferred younger applicants with shinier resumes and less experience. Within 3 months, the Soo-Yeon Cole Foundation, named without hesitation, approved without debate, employed 14 caregivers. Each one was someone the system had overlooked, underpaid, or discarded. Each one was given a contract, benefits, and a rate that reflected the actual weight of the work they did. The funding came from the trust Mrs. Kang had established alongside the deed.
a separate allocation, earmarked specifically for this purpose, with a note in the trust language that read, "For the care of those who care for others." Did you catch what she built? A dying woman in her last months designed not just a transfer of property, but a transfer of purpose. The house was not a gift. It was a vehicle. And Zara was not a beneficiary. She was a driver. Drop what you think in the comments. I want to hear it. The foundation operated out of a small office on the second floor of the estate, the room that had once been Zara's converted storage closet. She kept the single window. She kept the creaking bed frame pushed against the wall, now serving as a makeshift shelf for file boxes. She could have used any room in the house. She chose the smallest one. Not out of humility, out of memory. That room was where she had lain in the dark and listened to Mrs. Kang cough through the wall. That room was where the promise had been kept, night after night, in silence and in the dark. It deserved to remain part of the work. Helen Sue visited once a month. Not for legal reasons. The trust was settled, the transfers complete. The last of Victoria's challenges dismissed with a finality that left no room for appeal. Helen came because she had promised Mrs. Kang she would. "Check on her," Mrs. Kang had written in a separate note, one Helen kept in her desk drawer. "Not because she will need help,
Because she will forget to stop working long enough to eat." Helen brought lunch, every visit, a different restaurant each time. They ate in the reading room with the curtains open and the jasmine in the air, and they talked about the foundation, about the caregivers, about the families being served. They did not talk about Victoria. There was nothing left to say. Victoria had moved to the West Coast, a city where no one knew her married name, and where the Ashford name carried just enough residual weight to open doors that did not require references. She had not contacted Junho. She had not contested the final settlement. She had, by all external measures, accepted the outcome, though acceptance in Victoria's case looked less like peace and more like a strategic withdrawal. A retreating army that burns the bridges behind it not out of despair, but out of the refusal to let anyone follow. Graham Holt had resurfaced briefly, a consulting role at a small firm that did not ask about his disciplinary record. He would live out his career in the margins of a profession he had once moved through with confidence. His name would not appear in any future filing related to the Kang family. He had been erased from the story the way a watermark is removed from a document, technically gone, but the paper still bears the impression if you hold it to the light. Junho visited once. It was a Wednesday, late afternoon. The light was doing that thing it does in autumn, golden and low, stretching shadows across the driveway, making the oak trees look like they were leaning toward the house. Zara was in the reading room when Diane knocked on the doorframe. "He is here." Zara closed her book. She went downstairs. He was standing in the foyer, the same spot where she had first seen him walk in from the rain months ago, when the house changed its frequency and the grandfather clock ticked quieter. He was wearing a dark jacket, no tie, His hands holding a small wooden box with the care of someone transporting something fragile. "This was hers," he said. No greeting, no small talk. He set the box on the hallway table, the same table where Victoria's lilies had once stood, now bare, except for a simple ceramic bowl Zara had placed there, because she liked the way light played across its rim in the morning. Zara opened the box. Inside, the business card. Helen Sue, attorney at law. The same card from the nightstand drawer. The one Mrs. Kang had shown her on that first night and said, "Not yet." But this time, Zara turned it over. On the back, in Mrs. Kang's handwriting, the small, careful characters she had formed even when her hands could barely hold the pen. A message Zara had never seen. "She will need this when she is ready, not before." Zara read it twice. The first time standing, the second time sitting, because her legs made the decision for her. She, not the card, not the lawyer. She, Zara. Mrs. Kang had written about her in the third person, to her son, on the back of a business card. Months before the envelope, months before the letter, months before the claws or the cameras or the trust. She had known, from the beginning. From the first night Zara sat in the chair and did not speak, and did not hover, and simply waited. Mrs. Kang had known what Zara was, and she had begun building accordingly. Junho stood by the table. He watched Zara read the card the way he watched everything, with full attention and no commentary. His hands were at his sides. His face was still. But there was something different in his posture today. A looseness that had not been there before. A settling. As if a weight he had been carrying for a very long time had finally been set down. Not gone. Set down. The difference matters. "Thank you," Zara said. She placed the card back in the box. He nodded. He looked around the foyer, the bare table, the ceramic bowl,
the absence of white lilies and the presence of light. His gaze traveled up the staircase, along the hallway, toward the reading room where his mother had spent her last year. His expression did not change, but his breathing did. One deep, slow intake, held for a moment, released through the nose. The breath of a man standing in a place that is no longer his, and finding that he is at peace with it. He turned toward the door. Zara did not stop him. He did not linger, but at the threshold he paused, half-turned. "The trees need trimming," he said. "The third one from the gate drops branches in the wind. My father always said it was the stubborn one." Zara almost smiled. "I will take care of it." He nodded once. Then he walked down the steps, through the mist, past the 12 oaks, and through the gate. It opened. He passed through. It closed. Zara watched from the window, the same window he had stood behind the night his wife threw her out. The symmetry was not lost on her. She stood where he had stood and watched him leave the way he had watched her leave. But the weight was different. The window was hers now. The view was hers. And the woman standing behind the glass was not watching from a cage. She was watching from home. 3 weeks later, a letter arrived. Not from a lawyer, not a legal document. A plain envelope, hand-addressed, the handwriting careful and precise. The kind of handwriting that belongs to a person who believes that how you write a word is as important as the word itself. Zara opened it at the kitchen table. Morning. Coffee in a cup that was not from a cardboard box. Rain against the window, soft, rhythmic, the kind that makes a house feel like a shelter instead of a structure. One line. She read it. She set the letter down on the table beside her coffee. She looked at the rain. She looked at the room, the kitchen Mrs. Kang had fallen in love with before she fell in love with the man who built it. The marble counters, the stove from Lyon. The warmth that had nothing to do with temperature and everything to do with what the walls had witnessed and survived. For the first time in this story, the first time in 11 months of separate plates and back entrances and 4-minute visits and garbage bags and gravel cuts and gas station fluorescence and sealed envelopes and behavioral clauses and cameras that never stopped recording, Zara smiled. Not a large smile, not a performance, a real one, the kind that starts at the corners of the mouth and moves inward, settling somewhere behind the ribs, in the space where grief lives next to gratitude, and both of them have learned to share the room. The coffee went cold. The rain kept falling. The house breathed around her. Old bones, strong walls, open curtains, jasmine in the air. She did not tell anyone what the letter said. Some things are not for the audience.
Some things belong only to the people who earned them. Subscribe and turn on notifications not to miss our next story. Share your thoughts in the comments and inspire others. And if this story made you feel something, pass it on. Someone out there needs to hear it today.